It's time to take a ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive with our co-hosts, Alan Saunders and Zachary Smith.
Welcome back to another episode of Steelers Afternoon Drive. I'm Zachary Smith. That is Alan Saunders. Alan, I'm not going to say the word just in front of it anymore, but you and I on the show. No third person today.
It's OG Steelers Afternoon Drive. I'm fired up, man. The music, it's a Monday. It's kind of dragged along until right now. I'm ready to go. Let's talk some ball.
There we go. Great energy. I appreciate that coming into the show. No new stuff really, so we should do a bit of housekeeping. There's some questions that we haven't gotten to, so this just goes to show you.
I think these are good questions too. Like I think not only are they good, but there's like several of them that all fit together, which tells us that at least some of you are paying attention to what we're talking about. That's always very good to know that, like, oh, this is a good question for these guys because they've been talking about this.
Listen, Thomas Brocious did a nice job getting out in front of everybody else in terms of Ballage Awards here. It's going to take a while for anybody to catch him.
We may need to bring that back and make that a thing again. I think we
probably... Hayden Bishop wants the title, I think. Hayden Bishop
has been doing yeoman's work there with the questions. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So we covered something that he brought up about the running back situation on Friday, but he was in the mentions as well, trying to get some questions in that he wanted to know about. One of the questions he asked actually got parlayed into an article that you wrote over the weekend. So shout out to Hayden for this. But he asked, what should fans be hoping happens with the QB situation this season? Part of me wants top 15 QB play from Russ, but another part of me wants Fields to show flashes as a potential future franchise quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've talked a little bit about this on here, and I think it's pretty clear that the best option is that Justin Fields is clearly the better of those two quarterbacks, that Justin Fields earns the starting job from week one, plays really well, and never looks back, because then your quarterback situation is taken care of at that point, you're signing to like a 5-year deal, right? Like, so I think that's the best case scenario. Now, how likely is that? Given his history in Chicago, not particularly likely. His average passer rating over 3 years was 82.3, which would have finished 27th in the NFL, just ahead of Kenny Pickett last season. So the slightest of improvements is what you should realistically expect if Justin Fields plays. But I think we all see the talent and we all see the potential still that has yet to be fully unlocked there. And I understand the reason that there is to have hope that he can do more than he has done in the past. Even if he is just the same as Russell Wilson as a passer, the fact that he is potentially the best running quarterback in the NFL, and 10 years younger, there are a lot of tiebreakers in Justin Fields' factor. Like, he has to be significantly worse than Russell Wilson for the Steelers not to want him to play. Like, it is going to have to be a clear advantage for Wilson, to me, for Fields to not play over him, because there's so much going for him. The youth, the potential for future years, and not just this year, the running aspect of it, durability. Like, I think there's a whole bunch of reasons why the Steelers and Steelers fans should want Justin Fields to be the better of the two quarterbacks. I think we can say I'm not sure that's likely, but I think that's very clearly the best possible outcome.
Speaking of something that would be unlikely, and I'm not saying that it wouldn't happen, but if Justin Fields were to turn out to be a good, even good player, what you're talking about, let alone like being the going forward, the starting quarterback for this team, to me is something completely different. But out of first round quarterbacks to post negative EPA in each of their first 3 seasons, here's that list: Joey Harrington, Kyle Bowler, Sam Darnold, Daniel Jones, Zach Wilson, Justin Fields. That's the entire list. Nobody out of that group has ever turned it around to then become a plus player, obviously, in the NFL.
You're giving up on Zach Wilson already, I guess.
Is that, no, yes, I am giving up on Zach Wilson already. I don't think that, although I will say, if like somewhere to land at all with Sean Payton, I guess I don't think it's going to happen by any means. And they drafted Bo Nix to be the starter. But like just in terms of getting a coach that could maybe do it, Sean Payton potentially. But yeah, I'm fully out on Zach Wilson.
Are you fully out on Justin Fields? Do you think that means that he's gone?
No. And there's probably some bias that's playing into that. Fully admitting to that. But I think
when I look at that group, like the thing that stands out to me is that like Justin Fields doesn't have to do it all with his arm. Like he's
the toolsiest of that group.
He just has to be an average throwing quarterback. If you include his running game, then he's out. He'll get to positive EPA per play.
Granted, Vanilla Vic, Daniel Jones, definitely an underrated athlete, but yeah, he's not Justin Fields. So you're right. Like they're out of that group, he certainly has the most things that you can't coach that could make him at least get to somewhat of a baseline level.
So you said about this year and sort of just ignoring the future, how good does Justin Fields have to be? Or I guess how good do either of these guys have to be for you to want to sign them to an extension next year? Like if they get like 10 to 15 in the league quarterback play, are you going to bring that guy back? Or do they need to get better than that for the player to get a contract extension? And is it different for Wilson than it is for Fields?
Ooh. The thing that I feel like is kind of flying under the radar and people aren't really thinking about is like, yes, they got Wilson cheap this year. That's not going to happen again next year. Especially if you're the way that you're talking, if he's a top 10 to 15 quarterback, that's just not going to happen. I'm curious. Justin Fields, that contract to me is so intriguing. Like, even if he is that this year, do you really what is the market for him going to be after just 1 year with him being a top 10 to 15 option? Like, I don't even know. I don't know how to answer. Well, I'll start by saying this too. Tyler and I had this conversation around the 4-1-2, and we actually disagreed about, because I said Justin Fields should be the starter this year, and he said Russell Wilson. My entire thinking with Justin Fields was exactly what you said at the beginning of this show. Like, for me, I want to know if they have a solution now and for the future at the most important position over Russell Wilson bringing maybe marginally better QB play for one season. Like, I don't know that it's that. Like the him being what he is at this point in his career, Russell Wilson, compared to what Justin Fields we think is going to be, to me, there's not enough gap there, if there is at all, to play Russell Wilson over Justin Fields. As far as the question that you asked, like, what do they have to look like to get a contract extension? I don't even know. I think that's the most intriguing thing about all this to me is that none of these guys are under contract beyond this year. I don't know what it looks like.
Well, so you said, what's the market if he has one good year?
Yeah.
Not a great year, but like one good year.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Baker Mayfield gets 3 years, 100 million, 40 guaranteed. Is that about where
that's being thrown away? Yeah.
I think that's like a good year for Fields. I would do that. Would you do that for Wilson though? Like, I don't know.
No,
I think if Wilson is just okay, I think I'm much more inclined to look elsewhere going forward.
Even
or
like
turn it over to Fields. Like if you think he's, if he gets a look, like that's the really the even the scenario I just laid out where he plays and he just plays okay. Like at least that's a fair evaluation. The really tough one is just Wilson is just okay, gets hurt, Fields comes in for 3 games and tears it up, and then you're like, now what? Like I don't know. There's so much uncertainty. Does the fact that I don't think any of us expect the Steelers to be drafting in the top 10, and that there are not a ton of big name free agent quarterbacks in next year's class factor into that equation for you?
Maybe to a degree. Again, that's why it's like, with what you're saying, even if Russell's like, okay, I don't know that I'm going into like that 30+ million per year thing for a 35-year-old quarterback. That's just okay. At his age, mainly because like with Justin, again, I think that there's just more to tap into there, and it's the potential of what he is. Like Russ isn't going in the air is not pointing up anymore. You hope that it's at least plateaued, probably going down. With Justin, could still be going up.
Yeah. just to mention the free agent class, Dak Prescott, it seems like is at least possible that he will get to free agency. Jordan Love, I can't imagine the Packers letting that happen. Tua Tagovailoa is interesting. I can see kind of both sides of that one, where maybe they feel like they could do better. Like maybe they would try to sign Dak, but there certainly aren't a lot of, other than that, there aren't a lot of free agents out there where you're like, oh yes, that guy's better, that, go get him. It's very much, limited options. Now obviously someone could underperform and get cut or something like that. So I don't think anybody of us this time last year was like, oh yeah, Russell Wilson and Justin Fields definitely going to be available. Right. So you never know, but it's not setting up like there's this bumper crop of free agents. It's also not, I don't think it's going to be this kind of historic draft class where we're looking at quarterback, starting quarterbacks taken down in the teens or in the 20s either. Certainly you should know some of the names: Shadur Sanders, Quinn Ewers, Riley Leonard, Jalen Milroe, Jackson Dart, Carson Beck, but like Drew Aller has been talked about from Penn State. But I don't know that this is a draft where you're getting somebody at 20 and plug and play a starting quarterback into what is a team that says it wants to win now. I think the draft feels like, of everything that's possible here, re-signing Russ, re-signing Fields, going the free agent route, I think that feels almost the least likely.
Yeah, somebody brought up this actually to us over the weekend. Chuck, literally, I love that his name is just Yinzer.
Yinzer Chuck, as he's
Yinzer Chuck. There we go. With the rumors already starting to slowly grow, what are your thoughts on the Steelers signing Dak next year? Money aside, just purely player standpoint. What I love about this, honestly, is, have you seen a rumor about this? He said with the rumors starting to
slow. Yeah, there was something over the weekend. Somebody said,
oh, like his next team, like the odds or something.
Yeah, like it was Jeremy Fowler sort of threw it out there, right? Where it was like, where could Dak go if he doesn't re-sign in Dallas? And he's like, Pittsburgh.
Gotcha. I thought this was Chuck's way of like planting the seed and he himself starting a rumor, but saying people are saying,
yeah.
You know what's funny though is Nick and I actually briefly touched on this weeks ago, like when we were still talking about the Brandon Ayuk thing.
Well, listen, it does not take a lot to get Nick to talk about Dak Prescott. That is the other reason that I wanted to have this, on this episode of today's show.
Okay, well, there you go. Like, we were talking ad nauseum about Brandon Ayuk, and then we started talking about, is it more realistic for them to pay two receivers like a total of $50 million per, when you talk about also paying George, or sign Dak Prescott in free agency? Because right now, obviously, with no solution at quarterback beyond 2024, which one do you feel like is more plausible? Would they spend the money on quarterback? We haven't really seen them have a high-priced quarterback, obviously, since the days of Ben. Is that something
they've never had a high-priced free agent quarterback? Never.
Yeah.
Have they gone? I mean, Kent Graham, was he the biggest free agent contract they ever signed? Like it's not been done in the team's history.
We're talking about two things they really haven't done, like paying two receivers. One of those you'd have to give up draft capital plus give a massive contract to, or is it more likely that they would pay an outside quarterback with the hopes that he'd be the next franchise guy?
I don't know. I feel like we're in such uncharted territory that it's actually really difficult to make like a reasonable prediction. I don't know. I think it's hard to envision paying two receivers big money and not having a plan at the quarterback position to take advantage of them. Like, how do you get return on investment for Brandon Ayuk if you don't have a quarterback? It doesn't add up to me. Yeah. And then if signing Brandon Ayuk keeps you from getting that quarterback, to me, that's worse than not having him, right? Like if you, let's say you trade for Brandon Ayuk this year, and then next year you really want Dak, but then you don't have the cap space to do it because you traded for Brandon Ayuk. I don't know. I'd rather have the quarterback. And figure it out, especially for a team that has historically drafted wide receivers very well. And at a position that I honestly think, I truly believe that the market is wrong on, and that the prices for receivers should be going down, not up. because of there's just a pure volume of high-level prospects that keep coming out of college football year after year after year. And we are seeing the NFL trending back towards running the ball more. Like, some of the most successful teams in the NFL are the ones that have run the football the most over the last 4 or 5 years. Teams like the Los Angeles Rams, the San Francisco 49ers, Detroit Lions, Baltimore Ravens, Philadelphia Eagles. Those are some of the best teams. And so I think that we're seeing the NFL, I think, move back to the run a little bit. College football, I don't think, is making that same shift. I think there's going to be this bumper crop of wide receivers coming up. So I would personally be really hesitant to pay 2 wide receivers without having a quarterback plan in place. But as far as what the Steelers will do, I think we're getting to a point where it's getting hard to predict. Not like they've just not put themselves in situations like this very often. Not to mention Omar Khan, has not been in any of these situations before. We can only just sort of make inferences on what the organization has done in the past.
And with what you're saying, though, about getting back to running the ball more. You mentioned return on investment with wide receivers. If you're bringing in a player like Dak, are you getting the real return on investment if it's in like an Arthur Smith-like system? Do you feel like? And also with teams running the ball more, clearly that's also been the way that Pittsburgh wants to do things, and certainly will be with Arthur Smith. Does it even make sense to have that highly priced of a player at the quarterback position?
I mean, I'll be honest. I kind of think Dak is just an elite level game manager anyway. And like, this is actually a perfect offense for him, but I don't know what the market is going to be for him. I'm not paying. What did Kirk Cousins get? Like, I don't want that deal for Dak. If that's what the price tag is, then I would be out. So I guess it depends on what you're paying him. But yeah, I mean, I think no, you're not going to maximize what you're paying for at quarterback with this offense. I also think. I don't know. I just have a hard time seeing them turn this thing over to a rookie when they say they're trying to win right now. Like, where's the middle ground? I don't know. I guess the middle ground is keeping Justin Fields, probably. But, like, there's a lot of hope in that sentence, more than there is, like, factual prediction going on. Like, I just – if he turns out to not be very good, then I don't know what the plan is. And I'll be honest – I don't think the Steelers have an idea what the plan is either. Like, so far, we've talked a lot about what we think they should do or what they might do.
Yeah.
Like, I don't get the sense that they have any idea what they're doing beyond this year either. Mike Tomlin is like an obstinate level, not look aheader. And I think Omar Khan is generally a little bit, works with a little bit more foresight. But on this one, I'm not even sure he has a firm grasp of what this team looks like beyond 2024 in terms of the quarterback position.
I wanted to throw out an opinion about, because you were talking about receivers coming in more pro ready and like you not being in agreement with the way the market is trending necessarily at that position. One reason that I kind of feel like that is happening too, or at least part of the equation, is because I think quarterback play is not as good as it's been in the past. Like, you obviously have the guys at the top, but I think, like, we're talking about Dak right now. Where would you put him in terms of NFL quarterbacks? But I don't like you. I like Dak. I don't necessarily think that he's a guy that you just like hitch a ride to and say he's taking us to the Super Bowl. So I think it's more about paying receivers because you're needing guys at those positions to elevate the quarterbacks as opposed to the other way around that it's been in the past. I just think quarterback play around the league isn't necessarily at the level that it used to be at.
I think we were spoiled by a pretty generational run at the quarterback position over the last 20 years. I think what you're seeing now at quarterback is much more like what the league has mostly looked like. If you take away a 10 to 15 year run of Brady, Manning, Breeze, Ben, Rodgers, Favre at the end, Rodgers at the beginning, Eli even in that group, like, if you take away that time period, I think what you have in the NFL is mostly what it has looked like, where you have 3 or 4 dominant quarterbacks, another 4 or 5 who you feel pretty good about, but are clearly not at that level, and the rest of the league's kind of scrambling and playing schmucks. Like, that's sort of what I think mostly the NFL has looked like at the quarterback position. I think right now, specifically, the issue that has kept us from repeating what happened before is that I think college football offenses have gotten very gimmicky, I guess is the word I'm looking for, where like a lot of teams are doing things that NFL teams are not doing. Also, they're because they're gimmicky, they're trusting their quarterbacks to do less and less on the field. So you're having guys that are doing less and less processing. There's a really good interview over the weekend with Tom Brady, who asked him like about the job of the quarterback and what he's supposed to do. And he said, look, basically, I need to get to the line and make sure that our play that we called in the huddle is still going to work against the defense that I'm seeing, and then find a way to be able to get my team into the right position in the line in like 5 seconds. And the coordinator has to trust me to do that. And I'm not seeing college football quarterbacks come into the NFL with those skills. I think it's one thing Kenny Pickett was absolutely awful at. He just did not have that. And even though he was in a pro-style offense at Pitt, clearly he was not given the freedom to call a bunch of audibles and move guys around and change protections the way that he needed to be able to have success in the NFL. College football defenses are extremely predictable. I covered Pitt for like 6 years. I could tell you Pitt's defense on 80% of the plays before they leave the huddle. There's no secret to it. There's no surprise by it. They're not trying to fool anyone. They just go out there and do what they do. Third downs, they get a little bit more creative. Every once in a while, they mix in a blitz. But like most of the time, they're in the same defense over and over and over again. You will not see an NFL team run the same defense 2 plays in a row. Like the Steelers have 500 defensive calls probably. It requires processing at a higher level. I think we've lost a good bit of that. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. Is the answer to have Kirk Cousins? Is the answer to have just old hanging around quarterbacks be your bridge to contention? I guess that's a middle of the road too, but I mean, even Kirk Cousins got paid. I mean, what's the affordable version of Kirk Cousins look like? I do think, man, look at that Trevor Lawrence contract. Like, are you signing up for that? I'm not. Like, I think he's an average quarterback and he's getting paid a ton of money. I do think we are getting to a point where some NFL team is going to try to moneyball the quarterback position and just say, we're not going to pay him anymore. And we're going to roll the dice with like Jacoby Brissett or whoever we can get on the free agent market every year and spend all our money elsewhere and take advantage of the 1 or 2 guys that might be available and just try to go that route. Because like you said, there are not enough good ones. And the Steelers are far from the only team that are having this conundrum at the position.
This is kind of unrelated, but there is some talk about this over the weekend. I can't remember what player it is that brought it up, but do you think it's possible at all that these teams are having, because I don't even know like how close it is in the rear view, about the quarterback specifically having their own salary cap and then the rest of the roster? Like, do you think that's even without, first off, do you believe that's in the realm of possibility? Is it close enough that these teams would be kind of having that foresight to operate that way already?
I mean, that would make that strategy useless if you have a separate salary cap for quarterbacks. Mm-hmm. No, I don't think the union will ever agree to that. It doesn't make sense to me. I don't know why the teams want it, to be perfectly honest. I guess to try to stop themselves from giving out contracts like the Daniel Jones deal, like what I think this Tua deal is going to become, where you have these teams that are saddled by obviously bad quarterback contracts. I mean, if I'm the union, I want to go the other way. I want to say steal the designated player rule from the MLS. Everybody gets one player the salary cap doesn't count against. Give me that. Like that's to me is a better way to navigate the quarterback position, where you get one contract that cap doesn't apply to, and I think that the union I know would agree to that. Now, there's going to have to be a concession because that's going to increase pretty dramatically, I would imagine, the percentage of revenue that goes to the players. But if you want an 18th game, hey, I'm not saying I could be a mediator for the NFL and the NFLPA. I'm just saying I have one good idea.
Yeah, I'm on board. To bring this kind of full circle, it's funny because if you asked me, is the Steelers 2025 starter on the roster right now, I would say yes. But if you ask me to say which one it is, I don't know that I could definitively say which one I think that it is. I'm just saying yes to it being on the roster.
I think I agree is more likely than not that the Steelers 2025 starter is one of the 2 guys on the roster. But it's like the field is winning the conversation, right? Like, would you agree with that? Like,
yeah.
Like, I don't know. Like, yeah, probably. I don't know. Like maybe like 30% Fields, 30% Wilson, 40% somebody else. Like that's about where I'm at.
Yeah, it's it's so interesting. I can't wait to see it play out. But give us your thoughts, of course, in the comments, how you think that this whole thing's going to shake out. Aside from the quarterback stuff, we got a couple questions, both related to George Pickens, Matt and the News Standard. Like this username, by the way. Both want to know about George Pickens. They kind of
the News Standard is Lance Williams. I don't know why this is
okay.
The News Standard, but that's Lance Williams.
There we go. So Lance Williams said, should Pickens get 8+ targets a game? If he's not getting 8+ targets, where are they going?
Well, I guess the question is, how well can the Steelers prevent Pickens from being double teamed on literally every snap? Because like that's, you know, to me that's the question mark. I mean, he did not have more than 8 targets very often last year. They had 3 games where he had more than 8 targets, and 1 game where he had 8 targets. Obviously, Deontay Johnson was a bigger factor last year, but I'm not sure that it's so easy to just push all the rest of those targets onto Pickens, because I think defenses are going to try to take him away. I don't know how they're going to be able to get him free often enough to throw to him much more than that. You know what I mean? Like, I think 8's probably a pretty good number. So there was 1 game where he didn't have any last year, and so that kind of skewed the math. It was the game at Baltimore, but I mean last season he only averaged 6.2. Is going to be 9 from 6.2? I don't know. I mean, you're right. They got to go somewhere. They can't not throw the ball.
Yeah.
But I think they're going to throw less. And I think it really depends on how much they can get him free. I don't see how, if I'm the opposing defensive coordinator, I'm looking at the Steelers lineup, I don't know why I would do anything other than double cover George Pickens. Like I just,
right.
How are you going to make me not want to do that? To me, that is not clear right now.
Yeah. I mean, I fully agree. It's going to be interesting to see how it goes. But yeah, that's why I mentioned Pat Fryer. I mean, the second question from Matt kind of goes along with it, almost can just tie together. Is it in the realm of possibility that the lack of typical wide receiver 2 is seen by Tomlin as a useful tool to use to challenge Pickens to be the clear-cut leader of the room and access a part of him as a player that transcends his natural talent?
No. Is the short answer to that question. I don't think they would be talking about trading for Brandon. Like, it's very clear that the Steelers want to have another wide receiver, and that the reason that they don't have one has been their own failure to get one, and not because of some other reason that they don't want one. Like, you don't go and talk to all of the people that they've talked to if you don't want one. Like that. So I don't buy anything else. I do think that here's I guess order of operations. I think trading Deontay Johnson was in part because I don't think they felt like he was a good leader for George. They didn't necessarily want him to be someone that George was following, and so I think that was part of it there. Where, like, yes, the decision to trade Deontay Johnson in order to free George to be sort of his own person in that room, yeah, I can buy that. But they want to replace that production on the field. Like, no question about that.
It'd be funny if they were sitting there like, I mean, yeah, we're willing to give Ayuk $30 million per season. San Fran can have whatever picks they want. But at the same time, we want to see what George looks like as the leader of this room. So we're not going to do it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, they're not thinking like that. But I do think the situation was created in part because they did want to separate Deontay and George, and they wanted to see, look, this is basically a contract year for George, right? I mean, it's not. He's got 2 years left, but as we've seen with Pat, as we see with Najee, this is the time where you get that deal if you're a player that the team wants to keep around. So I think George needs to show significantly increased maturity and be a better teammate this year than he was last year if he wants a new deal next year. I think that's something that he has to show this coming season. And so I think this sets him up to be able to do that on his own terms, right? There's no one else to blame at this point. And I do think that's something they were looking to do. But, they still want to trade for Brandon Ayuk. And if they can't get Brandon Ayuk, they're still going to try to trade for somebody else. So I don't think that has anything to do with the fact that they haven't made a move. I think they haven't made a move because they haven't been able to make a move.
Talking about the non-football stuff with George, we might have had this conversation in the past. I know I've had it with a lot of other people, but like from a non-football standpoint too, do you almost feel like maybe not exactly this person, but Zach Azzani was the type of coach that they needed to have as the wide receivers coach this year for George?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is like natural human behavior where like, if you're not happy with the way the old model was going and you decide you're going to replace it, you're going to pick something that is wildly different than the last one, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like that, if you're Iowa and you decide you're fed up with being the laughingstock of college football Twitter and you're going to fire Kirk Ferentz, right? Like we're done. We're finally done. He's out of here. You're going to go hire some air raid coach, right? Like that's exactly what the next move is. Like you're going to go say, okay, the problem was we were embarrassed by lack of offense. Well, we're going to go get the most offense forward guy we can possibly find. And you see that over and over again, all over sports and heck, life, where, you get hyper focused on the one thing that was the biggest problem. And then you say, okay, well, we just need to be the exact opposite. And, Frisman Jackson, I think he's a good wide receivers coach, very laid back dude, very soft spoken, non-confrontational. And so I think if you're like, hey, look, the chemistry in our wide receiver room, the maturity, the level of camaraderie that we're getting is not good enough. Okay, well, let's go to the other end of the spectrum here. Let's get an uber pissed off short guy. Like that's what we're going for. Like let's just find us a little Napoleon out there and see if he'll run these guys into the ground. And like I'm not saying that's definitely going to work. I just think that's the natural reaction to me to someone saying, "Hey, this wasn't working. Fine, let's go get the other thing."
Honestly, if all they were looking for was a pissed off short guy, just put me out there and tell me the movie Basketball wasn't good.
You need the hater hat though for that. You would need the hater hat to really.
I got it right here.
To really complete the assignment there.
Hater on the front, and then just like the Steelers logo as a side patch thing.
Yeah, I like it.
Them up. All right. Anything else?
No, man, I'm good. Keep those comments coming, guys. Those were great questions. It really makes this show extremely enjoyable when you guys are a big part of what we're talking about because you're telling us what you want to hear about. So keep doing it. Absolutely.
You can do that in the comments of this show. Of course, you can just post at us, I guess, on that. That sounds so weird. Tweet at us. Tweet at us on Twitter. There you go. I'm going against the grain from now on. Alan, tell the people where they can find you on that website.
You can find me on the website that is currently hosted at twitter.com. With the username at @Saunders_PGH. PGH Steelers Now is the site's account. Make sure to go to SteelersNow.com. And at SteelersNow.com, don't forget to sign up for email notifications. You can get an email notification every time myself, Nick Faribaugh, Derek Bell, Chris Ward, the whole Steelers Now team writes a story, or you can get a daily digest of all of the best Steelers stories in your inbox. Definitely recommend doing that. You can also sign up for Steelers Now Plus. The promo code Allen10 is still working. Don't tell anyone. Also, it's $10 off, not 10% off. So it's even better deal than it's supposed to be. So let that out there. Like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Hit that bell for notifications. That's it, man.
That is it. But we keep forgetting to tell people on a regular basis, like, we got to see these afternoon rides at some point. Keep sending them in if you got them.
Yes.
I feel like we kind of push it more in season.
The previous one that I submitted is the red pickup truck that I saw immediately after filming the afternoon drive. I saw it again in Irwin here where I live. So I just got to find this guy. I'm going to somewhere, someone's going to be walking back from the grocery store with the bags in their hand, and some maniac is going to come running over to them, asking them questions about their pickup truck. And this is that maniac.
And then you're going to realize it's like one of the people that comments to us. It's Thomas Brocious, or
if it was one of the people that comments to us, I feel like they would have said something by now.
They would have. And I'd be very upset that they hadn't sent it to us.
Right? Exactly.
So, yeah. If you are listening somewhere else, not on YouTube, leave us a 5-star review and subscribe over there, Apple, Spotify, wherever your podcast from. Again, we want you guys in the comments. Let us know your thoughts on anything that we talked about today, question for a future episode, all that good stuff. Follow us everywhere. Also on TikTok, Steelers Afternoon Drive. Be sure to check that out. 90 seconds or fewer clips if you don't want to listen to the full podcast, but you absolutely should listen to the full podcast. Follow me everywhere, Zachary Smith, PGH. For Alan Saunders and myself, thanks for jumping in. Take another ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive.